So touching briefly about the place where self exclusion happens, right, which is at the job description level. In fact, I think last Wall Street Journal this weekend, they were talking about this automatic resume screening. And we touched a little bit about AI early on before we hit record. And so how do you see that those biases that have been built in into just that first step, which is, hey, resume comes in and Ashwin gets in, but somebody else does not because I match these keywords or these certs. But and again, while you see enormous successes where people have gone away from, yeah, it's put in. You obviously have to retrain the algorithm, or you have to get people involved in the first step, and it's all about automation. So again, going back to efficiencies and needing to screen resumes to biases that have been built in. I mean, what have you seen changes over there?
I think, well, a lot of the algorithms are biased. We know this. I mean, we've learned this, and social media algorithms are biased. If you get a bunch of 20-year-old white guys in a room, and then you're going to get answers that 20-year-old white guys look for, right? And we've seen a lot of that, certainly with social media, ignoring, again, other countries, other politics, other things, because it's falling into California algorithms, which is where a lot of this stuff generated from. In terms of resume reviewers, I mean, if you can put your first initial in your last name because you're concerned that the bias might pull you out because you're a woman. I think it actually the bias, I think part of the problem is the job descriptions. I know in bigger companies that I worked for, I would give the job description over to whoever was doing the hiring, and they would alter it. Like I would say, I need C++ developers, and they had a bunch of checkboxes. So they said, great, Java or C++. And I'm like, no, that's like saying I need someone who speaks French and you're giving me someone who speaks German. Like, it's close. It's not the same thing. Yeah. So often the people who are posting the descriptions don't understand the jobs. And when people see those job descriptions of 5 years experience in something that's only existed for 2 years, that's a fundamental problem. So people shouldn't be discouraged by these. You need 10 years experience in cybersecurity and 5 years in leadership, because that doesn't exist in this world. Like, it's so rapidly changing. So yeah, I think people need to be less discouraged by the job posting and just submit a resume. But yeah, in terms of algorithmic bias, I mean, that's a whole other thing. But there's so many women now. There's a great movie on Netflix that is a documentary about this, but there are a lot of women getting involved. And it's not just, actually the bigger problem between that kind of algorithmic bias is people of color, because the facial recognition doesn't pull facial features properly. And to me, that is a bigger problem right now that needs to be solved, because that is causing some dangerous situations in incorrect recognition, rather than the people not getting the job interviews.
Yeah, I remember the coded bias. I'm still halfway through that on Netflix.
Yeah.
So last question. I know this is a big one, but again, given your space, right? And for me, again, talking about my own biases, right? When I hear the word chief privacy officer, right? For me, it's he or she has to belong to the legal side of the house, because those are the people that are promoted into that privacy. And then I saw your post where Sophia Muller, manager KPMG Canada, had posted, and I'm reading from there, is our privacy team is looking for privacy wonks. I love that term, with backgrounds in engineering, law, policy, controls, compliance, security, risk management, ethics, and AI. And for me, that is an inclusive come join the privacy team. So again, how have you seen that whole word evolve from, hey, legal counsel leading to privacy, needing to keep the organization secure from litigation, to one that is much more inclusive of what privacy really means?
I'm going to credit GDPR with this one, because privacy regulations in the past were very legally focused. It was by the law, you need to only do this and state what you're doing and get consent. And then when GDPR came out, privacy by design was included as an element in GDPR. And some people chose to ignore it or didn't really understand what it meant. That's fine. But it's been continually pushed over and over again that the privacy by design in a service or product that's technically based has to have a technical component. It has to. And so we've seen other things. There's something called the Little Blue Book, if anyone's interested, which comes out of Europe, but it actually talks about real privacy by design strategies, like minimizing information, obfuscating information, separating, and tangible examples of what that means in your service or product. And so that was a really technically focused requirement. And so companies are suddenly realizing, even if they have a lot of general counsels assume that role of chief privacy officer, even if they understand the regulations, they don't understand how to do a privacy impact assessment on the technology and say, well, what's the access control? What is the disaster recovery plan? And then what's happened in the summer of 2021 is there's data that's transferred outside of Europe has to be done under something called the standard contractual clause, which is a document that basically says, hey, we promise to safeguard your data. They updated it in the summer with a list of technical safeguards, including encryption, including anonymization, and disaster recovery. And so companies that hadn't maybe thought of the technical side before, all of a sudden went, oh, I actually have to answer all of these security questions as part of my privacy regulation. And now we're back to that partnership again with privacy and security. So yeah, in order to protect information, you have to have things, again, like proper authentication and access control. And that is a technical question, and ethics as well, as you mentioned, which is a really valuable thing that's coming up more as AI and biometrics get introduced into a lot of these legislations. People are saying, okay, yeah, I could do facial recognition, but should I? And what are the consequences of doing that?
Yeah, I think those are a great final statement. I could, but should I? Again, yeah, thanks, Kat, for your time, and good luck.
Thank you so much.